Hey guys, Miles here, and today I'm going to be doing a video that I've been trying to do for a very long time. Now the reason why I haven't actually uploaded it in its entirety is because the subject matter is somewhat disturbing, and it definitely is something that I don't always feel comfortable talking about, especially when I'm not having the greatest of days. Fortunately, this week, I think I've been able to kind of gather all of my thoughts together so that I can actually put this video together in hopes of helping people who are considering going to a psychiatric ward or a psychiatric hospital. Now, before I start this video, I wanted to offer a disclaimer because it's definitely needed. Now, I know that the content of this video is going to be strongly against seeking commitment, which means basically going to a hospital when you're concerned about your mental health and then checking yourself in voluntarily. Now I'm saying voluntarily because you can also be taken to a hospital or a psychiatric ward involuntarily, in which you don't have a choice. Somebody's concerned about you and you have to go whether or not you like it. This project is if you have the choice, if you are considering going to one of these places, I wanted to be able to provide you with 10 reasons why you should rethink that idea based on my own experiences. Now, I'm offering this disclaimer because my experiences definitely don't account for all of the experiences a person could have in a place like this, and I've only been a handful of times, but when I can tell you, I'm putting into this project, so hopefully you can have a little bit better of an idea of what you're getting into before you make that decision, if it's up to you. Now, there are a few reasons why you might want to go voluntarily, like I mentioned, that have nothing to do with just being randomly concerned about your mental health or not knowing where else to turn. Sometimes when people are really sick and they're trying out different medications, trying to take care of themselves and to get themselves to a place where they can function, they decide to go to a hospital voluntarily. This is the key word of the day, voluntarily, because they want to try different medications, and they can only do that when someone is breathing down their neck, watching them every second of the day to make sure nothing goes wrong. That is one of the reasons why you might want to go, and why these 10 reasons that I am talking about today might not apply to you, because the risks would kind of be outweighed by the benefits in that kind of a situation. Now, I've never done that myself, so I can't say from personal experience. I've always been committed semi-involuntarily, which means somebody was so darn concerned about me that they said you're going whether you like it or not. But if you were going for a medicine trial, that would be one of the reasons to go that I guess wouldn't really be so horrible. I hate to say that because it is still going to be a really hard experience, and there are definitely things that are going to be kind of disturbing and frustrating, but again, like I said, there would be a benefit to it that you could kind of go, okay, well, this is important enough to me, I'm going to make it happen. In that case, you might not want to watch this video. You might want to just go into it without knowing anything and just hope for the best. Hospitals are most often going to lay out all the benefits for you. They're like, this is going to be great, and that's going to be great, and we're going to fix things, and you're going to be happy, and people are nodding their heads going, okay, sign me up. But this video is not about that. I am not going to tell you what's wonderful or great or any of those things, because I feel like that's what everyone will tell you. This video, I'm going to tell you what you won't like. If you have the opportunity to say no, then now you'll have these 10 reasons to be like, okay, well, there are reasons why I could rethink this, I could try out something at home, I could try to stay out of this place if, however, whatever possible. If you can do it, this is why. Now, another quick word before we begin. I have been committed, like I mentioned, involuntarily, first of all for self-harm tendencies, and then second of all for kind of like suicidal ideation. So if you don't know me and you're not aware of my story, I am absolutely crazy. That sounds so wrong. No, but it's definitely true. I have schizophrenia, so I see and hear things that aren't actually there, which can make life very challenging at times, and it's definitely kind of hard to live with this kind of an issue, especially when you never really know what could be going on. So both times I had kind of been like in a dark place and had kind of dealt with it the wrong way, so that was mainly why I've been committed in the past. But, and that's a very large but, those times it was, people were so concerned about me, which was great because, you know, people care, right? That's a good thing. But they were so concerned that they forced me to go basically against my will, and that was something that I was definitely not happy about. So if you feel like some of my reasons are a little bit harsh, or you feel like I definitely have like a negative perspective about the whole thing, that would be why. Anyway, I sound so biased. It's like, it's horrible, and I know people are gonna be looking at this like, Miles, this is crazy, what are you talking about? But I'm gonna try to be very subjective and just get right to the point. So here we go. If you wanted to click off this video, now is your time, because we are about to get into it. We're about to get in deep. Here we go. So without further ado, I'm gonna get right into it and share with you my personal list of 10 reasons to stay away from the psych ward. 1. No privacy. Now this might seem kind of trivial. I mean, obviously you're not living in your house, so if you are in a psych ward, you're not gonna have a lot of privacy. What most people don't know is that that's kind of like an understatement. When I say that you have no privacy, it means that at no time in your day while you're staying on a ward will you be able to get away with anything in private. Now, I'm not saying some people haven't tried and been successful, but they definitely try to prevent you from those sort of things. In my experience, the bathroom was one of those places that really freaked me out because my door actually had like a hole cut in where the knob would be, and ever so often, you know, when you were in the bathroom, like showering or just using the bathroom period, someone would come and knock on the door and they'd peek through that little hole and say, "Are you okay? How are you doing?" Which makes it really hard to use the bathroom, something you might not have thought about until you realize that when you're here you have no privacy. So that's one of the things that I found extremely hard because I am a private person. And I think most people like to go to the bathroom by themselves, but when you are on a ward, even that time is not your own. I think we had like a 5-minute max, like every 5 minutes they'd be knocking, they'd be looking through, and then if you didn't answer, which I had done stupidly my first day, they will open the door and come in and figure out what's going on with you, no matter whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So that's what happens with that. My very first time I was on a one-to-one, which means that somebody's watching you all the time, so you have no time alone. The door to your wardroom will never be closed, there'll be someone sitting there while you sleep, no privacy whatsoever. And I mean this in every literal sense, because when you're on a one-to-one, which is what I was usually on, somebody really is with you all day. They sit outside your door in the morning and all through the night, and someone's always watching you. So that's another reason your privacy is basically scrapped once you are committed. Another reason that I feel like your privacy is kind of invaded is that on most wards, they will actually search through your clothing items or search through your personal items if you've brought any with you, and then they can determine whether or not you actually get to keep them on the ward. So this means going through your pockets or, you know, and I hate to say this, but it has to be said, like undergarments, okay? They're gonna be going through your undergarments and going, is this elastic too tight? Is this something that, you know, you're gonna be able to wear and not maybe hurt yourself with it? Like everything goes. So there's no privacy whatsoever as to what you wear or what you bring, and they can take anything away at any time for the stupidest of reasons just because they can, and you have no privacy. 2. Limited access to outdoors. So the very first time I was committed was, like I mentioned before, it was kind of for self-harm, and I was on like a very small ward at the very top of a actual hospital, and the problem with that was we did not have any way to go outside. So for the entirety of my stay, we were indoors. Anyway, I'm an outdoors person, so I was like dying inside.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
Because I hate being indoors, kept inside for way too long, and you know, that can get to anybody. But we did have like a small gym that we could go to like work out once, I think it was like once a day. It was very, very seldom. And again, the windows were set like really high in the gym, so you couldn't see outdoors, and that will get to me faster than a lot of other things. So you couldn't really go outside, at least with my the first place that I had stayed. Now the second place was a little bit different. We actually had like a yard, but it was like a really scary yard. It had like barbed wire fencing or razor wire, whatever you call that. It's got like loops at the very top. And it had like a small jungle gym. Like, I don't even know why that was there, because I'm pretty sure everyone thought about hurling themselves off of it, but it wasn't very tall, so it was like, it would probably just look stupid. And like a really tiny basketball court, but it was like we were only allowed out there twice a day. And then if, like, let's say someone was acting weird, then everybody got punished. It's like, no one's going outside today. And that was the end of the story. We did like an extra therapy session inside, and that was killer. Especially since our day room, which is where we did our like group therapy, it was like right smack dab next to the windows that showed us where the yard was, and that again was like, oh, I could not deal with that. But if you're like me and you love the outdoors, you can pretty much kiss that goodbye, because they don't let you out very often, and when you do, it's monitored and for a very short time. If you're lucky enough to be somewhere where they have a yard, if not, you are stuck in the gym and you don't get to see anything. 3. Forced medication. This is probably one of the biggest issues I have to talk about, and honestly, it's probably because I absolutely hate medication, and if I can avoid it, I always do. Now, I do have a medication that I take, or a handful actually, every day that I have to take, but it's not like, per se, someone is forcing me to take them. It's that I know that I need to take them, so I take them so that I can sleep, so that I can function, whatever. But unfortunately, when you're on a ward, you don't have that luxury. So they don't say, would you like to take it? When would you like to take it? There's none of that. It's like you're taking it, or we're gonna make you take it, basically. You got two options. You can do it yourself, or they can force you to do it. And that can get really, really hard. I know at my first experience in a ward, I didn't want to sleep, because I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are crazier than I am, and I cannot stay here, and I definitely am not closing my eyes while there are nurses outside the door literally watching me sleep. And so I tried to stay awake, which was a great idea on my part, but also a stupid idea, because I was basically told, well, if you're having trouble sleeping, we'll bring you something to make you sleep, which is scary as heck, because, like, no thank you, I don't want to be forced into anything. But this is why this is reason number 3. If you want to think about it, if you want to have a choice, if you want to have an option, if you want to have flexibility, don't go. Oh my gosh, this is bringing back so many horrible memories. Anyway, you don't get to necessarily make all the decisions about what you take and what you don't. If, like, let's say you're having a bad day and you do something stupid. I threw a telephone. I did a whole bunch of things, but let's say that you're doing something crazy like I was, because you're not happy to be there and you've been taken against your will. And this is just speaking from experience here. This is one of the reasons why you want to stay away from this, because if you're doing those sort of things while you're there, doctors and nurses can make an executive decision to be like, yeah, I don't think we're going to allow this anymore. We're going to give you medication to calm you down, or we're going to give you medication to make things seem easier, or whatever it is they tell you at the time. They're like, oh yeah, that's going to help you. They can do it. It's not a, well, would you like to, or could we figure this out? No. It's, this is what we decided, and here you go, because you're under our care. Now, I was under 18, especially for the very first time that I had gone, and so they had made every decision alongside with my parents, so I didn't really have a say in that. And I know most of the time, if you're in like kind of a more therapeutic ward, they might try to talk it out with you, but in my case, it was never discussed with me. It was like, okay, this is what we're doing, too bad, here you go. And I was definitely not happy. I was in no way happy about that, so I got in quite a bit of trouble. But that is something to definitely think about. You don't have certain freedoms and options once you're there. They make the decisions, they carry them out, and it's pretty much no longer in your hands. Number 4, staff. Now, I kind of like went back and forth about whether to add this because there are definitely like, I wrote my notes down and it has in parentheses, staff, wins and losses, because that is in every sense exactly how it goes. You will come across staff that is super great, that you get along with, that you understand, and then there is staff that make every day like even more of a struggle. You don't get along with them, they're not personable, they're really brusque or gruff, and you know, every time you're around them it's like, oh my gosh, my day just got 100% worse, and it makes it even harder to deal. Now, in my situation, I had a staff member that I got along with really well, and she was like one of the few staff members who wasn't kind of like freaked out by me, and she always came to see me. But she always worked on weekends, so that meant that I got like 2 days to hang with her, and then it was like the rest of the week was staff that I didn't get along with, staff that made every day harder, and it was like it just made the time seem to go by so slowly. Now, in your normal everyday life, like let's say you live with your family and you're like, okay, I can't deal with you people anymore, I love you, but I can't deal with you. And you go to your room, you close your door, and you put on your awesome music, and you're like, I'm good, right? Well, when you are in a ward, there's none of that, so you can't get away from staff. They're there to give your medication and watch you take your medication and watch you in the evening hours and then take you to therapy and then get you to engage, and then they're there when you're trying to use the bathroom and when you're trying to get some sleep, and all of this, you cannot get away from them. So if you value your privacy and you don't want to be around people you don't like, then that is one really, really great reason to stay away from a ward, because there is no reprieve. There is definitely, at least in my experience, always been like a 70-30 split. So it's like there's always going to be 70% of the staff that you really don't like and about 30% of the staff that you might get along well with, but the main reason to avoid the ward is that that's not really great odds, and in my experiences it's always been like that. So if you want your privacy and you don't want to be around people like that while you either figure stuff out or try to recover or try out different medications, then that is one of the really great reasons to try to avoid the ward altogether. 5. Rigid schedules. So I don't know about you, but like my day is already kind of scheduled. Like I know what I do in the morning and in the evening. I have time where I spend time with the animals, I do my cleaning, I work on projects like this one. But when you're in a ward, you really don't get to choose what you do. Every day is set up exactly the same, and every day you are required to do the same activities, basically to just allow the staff to see that you're progressing. So like I think my very first day, they had 3 or 4 therapy sessions through the day, they had one-on-one therapy in the evening, they had an hour of visiting time, they had group therapy before dinner, they had like a wrap-up after dinner. So every moment of your day has something that you're supposed to be doing, even when, let's say, you don't feel like doing it. Like, I am definitely not a morning person. You wake me up in the morning and I will hurt you. So, being on a ward where they make you rise every day at 6:30 and send you off to breakfast, I was like, that was a game changer for me. I'm like, I don't want to be up this early. I don't want to deal with people this early. I definitely don't want to eat food this early. So that was one of the things that really got me. And then on the flip side, I'm a night person, like I mentioned, so I love to stay up during the evening, and everybody went to bed at 8. It did not matter whether you couldn't fall asleep or didn't feel like falling asleep or weren't ready to go. It was like, no, it doesn't matter. Everybody's in their room by 8. Everybody is sleeping, or else they make you sleep. And so there's a rigid schedule that just doesn't really allow you a lot of you time. I mean, I think we got an hour or 2 during the day to be alone, but then it was like we were working on schoolwork, we were reading, we were in our room, but it was like we needed to be still adhering to the schedule. There was like no freedom. And so if you value your schedule at home, or if you don't like schedules, period, that's one of the things that's going to make it really, really hard for you if you're committed to a ward. Because their schedule is your schedule, and there's no room for exceptions or falling behind. 6. Living space. So first off, I guess people think that when you go to a hospital, like, you kind of get the, I don't know, like the royalty treatment. Like, if anybody's ever been for like a broken leg or some other kind of mishap or medical condition, you know, they bring you food and they want to make you as comfortable as possible, and you've got a nice TV to watch, and it's like a nice experience. Well, you can pretty much take that and crumple it up and throw it out the window, because that is not what living on a ward is like whatsoever. You don't get a really nice bedroom, you don't get any comforts, and you definitely don't get nice food. I hate hospital food. I know a lot of people who love hospital food, but I feel like the hospital food at every ward just is exceptionally bad. It's just 10 times worse than anything. Anyway, I'm not gonna get off on that because this is about living space. But both of my rooms have been really, really sparse, at least the 2 times that I've been on like a closed ward. And so you got a wooden bed, you got a paper thin sheet that pretty much kept you freezing all night. Like it doesn't count as anything covering your body. There was a pillow that you had to like fold over 4 times like origami to even like sleep on it. Like it was so thin and flat. And then the beds, I don't know, they've got something against springs, like someone's clawed their way in there and tried to use springs for something crazy. I don't even know. But so you have like a rubber mat. I've always had a rubber mat as a mattress, basically. So it's like rock hard and you sleep on it and you feel like you'd be better off on the floor. Anyway, so as far as like sleeping in beds, if you have trouble sleeping at home, well, you're definitely gonna hate the beds on a ward because they're even worse. Ward beds are the worst. They're worse than the worst. You're all get so caught up in how bad they are that I can't even like pronounce my words anymore. Here we go. But yeah, so that's one of the issues. And then 2, I've always had tile rooms, so you get no carpet just in case you like to walk around barefoot. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. And then I had a room once with a bookcase, which was cool. But that was like a luxury, like not a lot of rooms had a bookcase. They gave me one because I had like books to put on it, but otherwise like I was in a room very much by myself, which I didn't get very often, but this one time that I had this bookcase, I was in a room by myself, so I had a little bit more space. But normally you don't get much else. We had like a little nightstand with like 2 drawers, but that was like it, and that was all there was. And that can get pretty like frustrating, especially if you have a lot of stuff to store and you bring stuff with you that's important and you don't want it lying around. Well, too bad. They don't care. None of the furniture can be moved either. Not that you'd be trying to move furniture, but everything's like bolted to the wall, so it's like even if you wanted to position your bed differently, well, too bad. There's a lot of too bads. Too bad for you, all over the place. So it's not like a hotel. It's not like a normal hospital room. It's just not comfortable. It's not comfortable. Again, like I get so caught up in this. It's like the words jumble, right? It's not comfortable at all. 0% comfortability. Is that a word? Okay, we're gonna go with it. That's a word. There's none of that. Another thing that has to deal with like comfort level is that there are like constant raids. And when I say that, you might think of like, I don't know, an army of people ravaging a camp or something, but it's more like one nurse who comes in whenever you're asleep or you're not in your room and basically goes through your stuff to make sure you haven't stolen anything. Now, I would say, that's crazy, why would you do that? But I was one of the people who stole stuff and kept it in their room because I thought, why not? And I didn't realize that they would raid so often. Now, I didn't steal anything of anybody else's, I just took small items from around the ward that I found interesting. So I had like pieces of plastic, and I had like, just little random things that I had found. Pencils, they have little golf pencils, and I love to draw, so I took some of those pencils to my room so I could draw on paper when no one was around, or at least when I thought no one was around, and they would come at night and raid those. They also took my glasses on various occasions. Like if I wasn't wearing my glasses, they would come in at night and like snatch them up and take them away. And I think it came to a point where somebody actually visited me and was like, "Where are your glasses?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. They just took them." I don't have my glasses anymore. So I couldn't see for like the better part of a week. But if they find any items in your room, and it doesn't matter, like my glasses, I need them to see, but my comfortability level was not that important, and they thought, okay, this is dangerous, so they took it. So that's another thing to think about when you're thinking about your living space. Nothing is really your own there, so that's not great. It is definitely not great. Not something you want to experience for sure. 7. No access to the outside world. Now, I think this is probably something that is like different with different wards, but I know basically via my experience, I've never been allowed like internet connection. I've never been allowed to have a computer, a cell phone, a camera. I was definitely never allowed even an MP3 player. Like, they won't let you have anything, or at least, and again, I'm saying this from my experience because I know maybe there's differences depending on what ward you're staying in, but with me, there was never anything like that allowed. Now, when I was visiting with family in the visitation room, they could bring me things, but I definitely couldn't bring them through to the ward, so I couldn't use them when I was inside. And that might not seem like a huge deal, but I know basically people nowadays are married to Facebook and Twitter and other social media, and you know, when the internet goes down, the world is ending. So if you can imagine spending weeks on end without connecting with your friends online or being able to see what everybody's up to or anything like that, you know, that's pretty detrimental. Like, they will give you a phone call. Most wards have a phone somewhere inside them, but it's always a timed thing, it's always monitored, so it's not like you ever get time to do a lot there or update anybody for very long or speak to a bunch of friends or anything like that. So if you and your phone are making plans to get married and you cannot live without him or her, then you definitely don't want to be on a ward, because there is none of that there, and that can suck majorly because you feel like you're completely cut off from everybody, which is probably the idea, but that doesn't make trying to get better any easier. 8. Male and female segregation. So, like, right off the bat, I have to say this because I think the media has ruined our view of what being in a psych ward is actually like, because they paint this like picture of all this drama, like these relationships, but I'm here to tell you firsthand, there are no like movie moments. You're not gonna walk in there and like find love. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. Now, the very first ward that I stayed at did have guys and girls living together. Now, they weren't obviously in the same rooms because they can't do that, but they were living together in the same like communal space. Now, if we had been given time, maybe we would have gotten to know each other better, or maybe, dare I even say, like, fallen in love, but that was never a possibility because every moment of every day was monitored, so you didn't really have time for that. There's no, like, matchmaking, psych ward matchmaking service. It just doesn't happen. And on the very second ward I visited, they actually had all the guys and girls together for the first week, and then when tensions kind of started to get high, some other girls had been fighting over one of the guys, and it was just like, it started to get crazy, as crazy as it can be when it's already crazy. I don't know. But they separated us, so they took all the guys and they went into one end of the ward and all the girls went to the other end, and then they cycled us out, so we would see each other in passing when we were going to like the day room, when we were going to eat, but it was never like we could sit down and talk with each other, we could hang out. It was nothing like that. Even in the yards, it was like, you keep to yourself, they don't want you within touching distance. They even had restrictions on like the way you could move. Like, we couldn't dance, we couldn't be like I said, close enough to touch a guy. They would yell at you, they'd be like, proximity, you know, they're like, get away from each other, basically. They don't want you up close, they don't want you near anybody, so it was like, it's very hard to get to know people, especially of the opposite gender. And it's not like they could come in, like, let's say you met a guy and you were like, oh, he's great, I'm gonna invite him to my room. No, there's none of that. He's not coming within a 100-mile radius of you, and he's definitely not coming in your room. Even other female members, they weren't allowed in my room. Nobody's allowed in each other's rooms unless you're a roommate, which it's my first time I had a roommate. Second time, it was like they were too concerned about me to give me a roommate, so I have this little room all by myself, like way up at the front. That was the one I was telling you about earlier with the where I got the bookshelf. But anyway, so if you're thinking like, okay, well, I'm gonna, you know, meet someone who's on the road to recovery and we're gonna click and we're gonna fall in love, yeah, the psych ward is definitely not the place for that, at least in my experience. And even if you did try to start something like that, it's definitely probable that you guys would be split up or you'd be kept apart. 9. Noise. Now, this isn't always the same with every single ward, but in my experience, it's either way too quiet, like creepy quiet, like hear a pin drop, oh my gosh quiet, or it's pretty ridiculously loud. And there have been times when it's been like a really odd mix of the two, but most often it's like one or the other for most times of the day. And that can get really weird. Like, I know at night times it was hard to sleep just being outside of my house on a bed that feels like a rock. But we would actually, my roommate and I, especially in the first ward that I was committed to, is we would hear screaming from the adult ward, which was upstairs from where we stayed. So, you know, you're trying to sleep and you're trying to shake off this vibe of people watching you and not being at your house, and you're hearing adults scream from upstairs very late into the night for, you know, no reason that you could ascertain. So that definitely ups the creep factor and makes it hard to sleep. And then during the day, there are definitely hours when it is extremely quiet and there's no music, there's no chatter of people, it's just way too darn quiet. And that can get to you faster than anything sometimes. I know definitely, especially with me having schizophrenia, I would talk to anybody who would listen, and I would talk to the voices and talk to my friend. I was constantly talking because I'm like, I gotta fill out the space. But then there were definitely times where you had other people on the ward that weren't happy. We had one of the members who would bang on the walls until somebody stopped him, and that kind of got creepy at times because you'd be doing something or you'd be in the day room and you'd just hear him thumping on the walls or throwing things. And we had another guy that was, oh gosh, he was always running around, so the staff was always chasing him, and he would do a lot of screaming as well. And, you know, I'm not like the loudest person in the world, but I definitely don't consider myself super quiet, but when like this stuff is going on, you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And you kind of fall back a little bit like, what in the world? Because it's not normal. Dare I say it's not normal. Nothing there is normal. And there you have it. But it does get kind of trying, and you know, not all of the wards are super large, so even when they're in their rooms, you can always hear somebody. You get no break, and it is constant and frustrating. So if you don't like a bunch of strange noises, or if you're sensitive to noise, or if you're even sensitive to extreme quiet, then you definitely don't want to stay on a ward, because you're gonna get a lot of that all the time, even at the most inopportune of times, and you really have no way to get away from it. 10. Forced stay. Now, this is number 10, and don't think just because it's way at the end that it's the least important, because it's actually the most important, and I cannot stress this enough. If you are committed involuntarily, or if you commit yourself voluntarily, the staff still has the power to say whether you leave or not. And this means, like, let's say you wake up one morning and you've been on a drug trial for a while and you feel great and you're like, I'm ready to go home. And let's say the staff has been watching you, and the psychologist on staff has been watching you, and the nurses have been watching you, and they say otherwise, or let's say just one of those people says otherwise, they will bring your case up to the head psychologist and they will say, no, I'm sorry, you can't leave. Nope, no going home for you until we figure out what we want to see and we feel like you're okay to go home. And this is a really hard thing for a lot of people, because there are definitely times when I was like, okay, I'm ready to get out of here. I have learned everything I can learn. I am ready to go home. And I couldn't make that decision. Now, if your parents commit you, let's say they made the decision, then they definitely have a voice in saying whether or not you get to leave. So if you have problems with authority already, you're really going to have trouble if you're staying in a ward, because the adults are in charge. The adults on staff are in charge. Your parents. It's not a very easy thing to go through, especially if you feel like I'm ready, I'm done, I want to get out of here. Or you just don't like the experience. It's like there's no turning back. You can't just, okay, I'm good, and walk out. That's never an option. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happens in every scenario, but at least the vast majority, it is not up to you. You have no say in that. And that can be the hardest thing. I know it was for me. I actually spent my birthday on a ward basically regretting everything I've ever done because it's just hard to not be able to be in control of your own life. And that is one of the top reasons why living in a ward, especially if you haven't been involuntarily committed, can become something kind of warped. Because if you think, okay, I walked in there and I did this voluntarily, but now they won't let me walk out, well, it's too bad. And maybe in some cases they will. I guess it depends on the place, but that was definitely never an option I had heard about during any of my stays, especially with the other patients. And I was on wards that were filled with people. So that's one of the main reasons that I can present for not going. You're not in charge. You don't get to say what you want or when you want to go. Well guys, those are my top 10 reasons for why you definitely don't want to go to a psych ward. And I know, again, that my opinion does not represent everybody's opinion and it doesn't reflect every scenario or situation, but this was just my top 10 list of reasons why I would give to friends of mine as to why to stay out of places like this. You can do treatment at home. You can try different drugs at home. You can go to therapy from the very comfort of your house. I used to have someone who came to my house for therapy. Like, it is possible. You don't have to go to a ward to get those kind of things. You don't have to stay in a hospital to get that kind of care. There are home health agencies, even if they're sometimes expensive. You can do drug trials week to week where you go in and see your psychologist and they work with you. I mean, there are so many reasons to stay out of a ward, and you don't have to go there to get help. You don't have to go at all, okay? I can't stress that enough. Most of the times my parents felt like it was the very last option and they had nowhere else to turn. But in reality, there were just a bunch of avenues that they hadn't thought about and hadn't been able to hear about. So hopefully with this video, I can kind of give you a little bit of an idea of how to create kind of a argument against going to a ward and encourage you to stay home and do what you can at home where you're most comfortable. I hope this video was helpful, guys. I have been struggling to make this because, again, the subject is kind of raw for me and it's very hard to talk about, but I want to help as many people as possible. If you're considering going to a ward, if you feel like you have nothing to lose, there are reasons to stay out. If you guys have any questions, you can definitely leave them down in the comments and I will try my very, very best to get back to you. If you want to share your story, this is a free zone. There is no hate in the comment section, so feel free to share your story or your experiences, and I cannot wait to hear from you. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and stay awesome.